Hello from Idaho. I thought I'd give y'all a tiny shop tour. I got all my stuff crammed into a two-car garage, and I have a couple of rules about how to use shop space. One of them is if you're going to use floor space, try to use it all the way to the ceiling. And then the other one is pretty much everything has to be on wheels. So let's step into the shop a little bit. First thing we see is a vacuum cleaner, and this is my abrasive cut-off saw slash cold saw, depending on which blade is on it. It's on a collapsible table, so I roll it out and set it up, and I can cut metal in with compound angles if I choose. Above that are sawhorses, 4 sawhorses, and electrical power. Over to the left in front of the furnace is another collapsible table, and it has a 12-inch compound miter on it. There again, I have to set it up, roll it out and set it up whenever I need to use it. There's the front wheel off the Scout. Here's some boxes of aluminum that I haven't put away since I last looked through them. Going on down this aisleway, I've got a acetylene cutting and welding torch on a set of really big wheels. They're 21-inch off of the front of a motorcycle, and so I can roll this out across the rough country if I need to, and it certainly rolls well within the shop. I've got a 15-inch Dayton bandsaw on a Hewlett-Packard printer stand, so it's got 4 casters on it, and I roll it out whenever I need to use it. Next is a 4-high storage cabinet. Those are Hewlett-Packard printer paper storage cabinets that come with some of the larger printers. Next down the aisleway is my Craigslist bead blaster. I'm thinking it's probably Harbor Freight, but I got it after the guy failed to put it together. And so below I've got a vacuum cleaner, what they call a vacuum in a bucket, and then in the middle is some either sand or beads, I don't know which. And then this is a water debris trap, which keeps a lot of the stuff from going into the shop vac. Inside is where I made most of the modification. First, you can see that the lid opens up. Typically this model, the lid is bolted down. You can see all the bolt holes, and the only way to get items in and out is through this side door. Well, that's very inconvenient and very limiting, so I put a big piano hinge on it and added some lights. Inside I've got a rotisserie, of course the bead blast handle, and a blow-off nozzle. I've lowered the screen, which used to sit up here, down about 3 inches, which allows me to get bigger items in there. I can actually get a 21-inch motorcycle wheel in there if I need to. Next is the aisleway that goes between the back wall of the shop. This particular garage had a little bench here with a vise. I'm using it for storage of tall things. You can see I have most of my consumables and storage stuff in clear tubs because I like to see what I have. I have this problem of out of sight, out of mind. Anyway, this is the back of my milling machine. Here's a 5-drawer filing cabinet that I keep steel in, square, round, angle, and flat. And since it's got roller drawers, it's pretty handy to keep heavy things in. Up here is my short stock storage for steel. Back of the milling machine. More storage along the back. Projects in progress, actually. And then I've got more of my storage stuff and consumables in these clear tubs. I've got a whole bunch of robotic stuff and chemicals and tape and gloves and wheels and just generally the kind of things that a fabricator keeps around. This is the back side of my 3-tiered welding cart. So this is where the gas bottles go. I can have up to 3 gas bottles. There's long rod storage, and you can see that each tier has a 220 plug on it, so that I can power my MIG welder, my TIG welder, and my plasma cutter. And then I built these wire, or these cable winders. Well, they don't wind, but cable holders with a curved top in them to keep the cables from getting a permanent crease. Okay, now we're going to go around to the front. Okay, we're standing at the garage door again. This is my Craigslist 7x12 metal cutting bandsaw, and it sits on a box that I made so that it raises it up so I don't have to bend over to use it. Here's a rubber mat for the cutoffs to land on. I've got, of course, a saw stop. And then I have a long rod, 3 foot of it, that I can put in here so that I can make a saw stop to where I can cut up to a whole bunch of pieces up to 3 foot in length. And I've added a long bolt so that when I need to clamp something that's short, it'll clamp over here. It'll clamp over here, and this part will keep the vise open on the opposite end. I bought this from Craigslist. It had suffered from neglect, so I took it all apart, put new bearings in everywhere, adjusted it, added a light, did some electronics work to it. And it's a faithful servant. It works really well. Also against the garage door is my 20-inch drill press, floor standing model, so I can drill into things that are really tall if I move that box of jigs and clamps and whatnot. And let's see, next to that is a bucket of cold water for cooling off things that I'm making hot with sanding, grinding, welding, whatever. There's a whole bunch of vices down there that I use to clamp parts for drilling. Here's my 2x72 belt grinder. I've made a video on this that shows it in operation. It is an unusual design in that the piece that comes out is only ½ inch wide, and so I can get pieces. I can grind to the inside of an L because it's very thin here. And then of course I have other end effectors. This is my platen that I use the most of the time, but I've got a small roller for making coves and whatnot. And next to that is a Craigslist buffer motor that I put a wire wheel on and a Scotch-Brite wheel. And all of this sets in between my engine hoist. And so it's a good way to stack things, because they intermingle. I get in trouble with the backlighting. At any rate, I've added a winch and stiffening, and a big pulley on the end. There's an old welding helmet, so that when it lifts straight up, and then the boom is used to get height or distance or whatever. And that's about it for that. Garbage can is crammed in there. Here's a 30-year-old air compressor, 5-horse, 30-gallon. When I bought it, I took it all apart and poured a half a gallon of epoxy paint inside the tank and added a foot valve so that I can just kick this valve with my foot to empty the water out. And because air compressors, these little air compressors die for 3 reasons. They rust out, or they burn up for lack of oil, or they burn up from lack of cooling. And so I added a cooling fan that comes on whenever the air compressor comes on, and then you can't really see it but from this side I have added a sight glass so that I get immediate indication of how much oil is in the crankcase. And so far, knock on wood, it's served me well. It's not really big enough for the bead blaster. I can run about 2 minutes without the air compressor coming on, and then if I continue to blast, I blast at about 50 or 60 psi. So it'd be nice if it were bigger, but I don't have a space for a bigger one anyway. I get into the back of it, behind it sometimes, so a vertical one would be hard to work around. The shelves around the shop I put in when we first moved here, and they are mostly full of household things. Got a whole bunch of Christmas stuff and spare tires and luggage and all that kind of stuff. But I worked out little niches where I store my stuff sometimes too. Anyway, next to the air compressor was a 20-ton hydraulic press, another Craigslist find, and I just finished putting it together, and it's been working great. I've added a few little details to it, but nothing earth-shattering. Next to that is this little stand that adjusts height by just turning this weight. These 2 weights turn a big nut, and this 1-inch all thread raises up the top. And so this is the outfeed table for my drill press whenever I need to drill long stuff. So if I need to drill a hole in the end of a piece of 6-foot tubing, I just clean it off, spin that weight until it gets up to the right height, and then I've got a nice level place to put my stock so that I can drill. Next to that is another scrounge. This is a high office chair that I found in the junk at Hewlett-Packard trash bin, and so I took all of the chair part off and added a flat piece of Herman Miller furniture that was also being thrown away. And so now I have a height adjustable welding stool. It goes down lower than it is now and up pretty high, and so I can get a very comfortable welding position. Speaking of welding, the motorcycle is on my motorcycle / welding table. The motorcycle lift is actually a Titan 1500. It has a 1,500 pound capacity. It comes with wings and a nose that allow me to get 4-wheelers on it. And then I put a piece of 1/2 inch plate on top of it for a welding table. So It goes down as low as 7 inches. It'll go down so where comes down to this level here. And it'll go up to 42 inches, which is unusual for a motorcycle lift. And so it is my welding table, motorcycle lift, mechanics table. I never work on the lawnmower or anything standing on my head anymore. I just roll it up here. It's hook the air up to it, pump it up to the height I want, and I work on it. And then I go to the next thing. Right now I got the Indian Scout on it. It's getting, or it has gotten, new rear shocks. And I'll probably make a video about my suspension changes. And it is currently getting air forks for the front forks. Indian Scouts are an amazing motorcycle, and I truly love mine. And they sit very low to the ground, which is great for people with small inseams. But they drag pretty easily in the corners. And even though I put an exhaust pipe on it that gives me more ground clearance and more power as well, it still drags some. So most people think I'm crazy, but I'm raising it 1 3/16 inches, which is how much I can get in the back with longer shocks. At any rate, shop tour. Sorry, I got distracted there. Over here is the back side of the shop vac and the cutoff saw and the acetylene torch, and I have long stock storage laying on the floor and going underneath my toolbox. This toolbox here is something I've had since the 60s, and it has all my machining stuff in it. You can see all the stickers from when I worked in the motorcycle shop in the late 70s. And so it makes a pretty good machinist toolbox for me. Another garbage can, another aisleway that I can walk all the way around my motorcycle lift. And I'm going to back up a little bit here and show you the roof. One of the first things I did is to put in track lighting. And so I've got 100-watt LED bulbs that surround the motorcycle lift, because that's clearly where I do most of my projects. And then I also have some more 100 watters over here above the milling machine. Now they're 100 watts equivalent. They're like 17 watts, so I'm still not pulling too much power out of the lighting circuit. At any rate, at the end of the motorcycle lift is my Tormach 1100 Series 3. Another thing that I truly love, it is very capable, it's very accurate, and I made a stand for it because the factory one was inferior, and I'm in the process of making a full enclosure. I have a ceiling mounted boom, 2 joints, that holds a GoPro for filming what's going on the milling machine. Here's my homemade computer stand. I got a 17-inch touchscreen and keyboard and a jogger and another shelf here that folds down, and it's on an articulated arm, so it can go way over by the welding machines. It can go way over on this side. It can come out pretty far away from the milling machine. So this is the front of my 3-tiered welding cart. 3 welders, well, 2 welders and a plasma cutter. I have a lot of cables, and so that's what you see mostly in the front. But it's wired for 110. It's got a fire extinguisher. I have a plasma cutter on the bottom, an old TIG welder in the middle. It works extremely well. It just doesn't have all of the fancy bells and whistles of setting balance and pulses and square wave durations and whatnot. And then I've got a small Miller TIG welder. At some point, I will probably sell this and sell that and get me a Dynasty. But they are so incredibly expensive that someday may be a long ways away. Okay, backing up again. Right next to the hydraulic press is my mechanics toolbox. The bottom section is, I don't know, about 7 feet long, and it has a 1/4-inch plate on top, a machinist vise. The side areas I use for my drills and whatnot. It's got a big high top, so I put my DeWalt charging stuff in there. I got a few sockets that I keep up on the top, and then it is literally full of dozens and dozens and dozens of tools. Next to it is air and power coming from the ceiling, and next to that is a little device I built to hold 90-degree offset grinders. I have 4 or 5. I've got a 3/8 inch 90-degree drill and a battery powered grinder, and then I've got one with an abrasive wheel, one with a flapper disc, and one with a skinny wheel, a cutoff wheel. And it is a very compact and useful way to store your grinders. I used to just have them sitting on the bench. They were always tangled up. The wires were always a mess. Okay, moving on. On the other end of the toolbox, I have some long clamp storage. There's a homemade slide hammer. There's some short clamps. And then behind that is more household storage, and of course the see-through boxes are all my project stuff. So that's a pretty good overview of how much stuff you can cram into a 2-car garage. I would love to have a lathe, but I have no idea how to do that. I'm always looking for ways to improve my layout. I have the whole shop in a CAD system, and I know the size and height of all my parts, and so sometimes I cut them all out to scale and move them around and get an inch here and get an inch there, but so far I haven't figured out how to have a lathe. Fortunately, the milling machine is extremely capable, and it can do some lathe work as long as it's not really long. And I've got several friends with lathes, but it'd be nice to have one. It doesn't even have to be CNC, although that would be nice. So anyway, here's the end of my shop tour. I hope this has helped somebody get more stuff into their shop, and maybe it just made you giggle at how old my equipment is and how much stuff I have crammed in here and how little space I have. But it works for me. It's very effective. I'm one of those guys that always puts the tools up as soon as the job's done, or if I leave the shop, and so it doesn't get to be too bad of a mess. This is kind of the biggest mess it's been in for a while, because I've had the Scout on the lift now for a few weeks, and I've gotten a bunch of projects done. I just finished cutting these brackets for driving lights out on my milling machine, and I just finished adding a USB charger to my speedometer nacelle, and mostly I've been working on the air shocks for a while. Okay, enough of my tour. Goodbye from Idaho. Thanks for watching. As usual, if you like or dislike my video, please select the appropriate button and let me know why. I really appreciate comments, and I will answer every one. If you're new to my videos, please select the subscribe and the notification bell to get more videos like this.